Ezra Levant is our guest. Once again, he's written a bit of a shocker, I have to say. I thought I'd read the first and last chapter like most journalists do before they interview you. Not always, but I had to read the whole thing.
Thank you.
Just had to. So his training. Take me from Canada. He's born in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, he was
Dad Egyptian born,
mom from Palestinian.
Palestinian.
His folks had it set. I mean, his dad got a degree in computer engineering in Ottawa. I mean, and this was the time when the high-tech sector in Ottawa was really taking off. I mean, they could have had a great life, but instead of being Canadians integrating in our community, his dad chose to become a fundraiser for Osama bin Laden.
Right, you said that, but there was a grandparents who had a bakery, so he had sort of, if you can, an idyllic childhood till he went where?
Well, his dad started taking the kids to Afghanistan and Pakistan to support the Taliban, to help liberate Afghanistan from the Russians. But when that was over, to help fight the global jihad. They believed that the entire world should live under Sharia law. Now, they still kept their foot on the ground in Canada whenever they needed medical problems. One of Khadr's brothers had a heart murmur, got expensive surgery. One day, remember Ahmed Khadr, the father, I mean, he was a serious guy. There was weapons, there were gunfights in Pakistan. He would be injured in a firefight, brought home to Canada for free health care. And so, I mean, Omar Khadr's mom, Maha, despises Canada. Said that, oh, I quote her in the book saying, oh, if we let our boys grow up here, they'll just be turned gay. Like, she hates the liberty, hates the sexual liberty, hates religious tolerance, but they loved their freebies, didn't they? So they would go over to Afghanistan and Pakistan, muck around, fundraise, get into shooting fights, come back here to get patched up for free.
And where is she now, the mother?
I think she's in Scarborough.
So she's living in Ontario.
Yeah, same with Zainab, the sister, and there's another brother up there. One brother was wounded, the dad died. I mean, this is it's a family business.
Right. Have you heard from them? Any reaction?
You know, it's funny you say that. I did get an email from Omar Khadr's brother-in-law. So this is a Gentile, a white Canadian who married Zainab. And he wrote me an email. It was a private email, so and he asked me not to divulge the contents of it, but it tells me that the family is aware of the book and they have read it. And they obviously disagree with some of my conclusions, but look, the facts are the facts. This guy is what he is, the family is what he is, and they've told me nothing that would make me change a word in the book.
So he had a dream to be a terrorist, and he was trained.
Yes, and that's the thing. He wasn't just some peasant who was picked up a gun and took some pot shots. He was trained, I call him the 007 I mean, like a Navy SEAL of terrorism, trained in poisons, in espionage, like in staking things out, like he was trained in assembling bombs. That's not something you can get at any tech school. Like that is, and they trusted him to do this, that he would do this by himself and lead others. He is I mean, remember his dad was a computer engineer. Yes. He is he speaks 5 languages, memorized the Quran. It's just so incredibly evil that he put his talents to terrorism.
You've dedicated this book to Sergeant Speer. Did you talk with his family?
You know what, I had an email exchange with his widow, but they are quite private, and I want to respect that. But one of the side effects of them being so private is their story is not told. And so if you do a search in newspapers, how many times Tabitha Speer or his children, his father's children are mentioned in the press compared to Omar Khadr, they almost get no mention. The media has turned Omar Khadr into the victim by writing Tabitha Speer into oblivion. They don't even mention her.
My understanding of Speer was that he was an exceptional soldier.
Oh yeah, I mean,
dedicated.
Yeah, and I mean,
brave, a medic.
Obviously, the people who knew him and loved him would speak well of him. But it's clear that just by his achievements and that, I mean, he was a great human being. But even if he wasn't, he was murdered in cold blood.
It's mystifying to me, not being a military woman, but mystifying why the U.S. soldiers wouldn't have killed Khadr.
Well, and that's the thing. The first thing they said to him, I mean, he lobbed the grenade that killed Speer and blinded Lane Morse. When the U.S. stood over him, he said, "F you, Americans, kill me now," because he wanted to go to heaven. Instead of shooting him like a dog in the desert there, they flew in an ophthalmologist from Kuwait to save Khadr's eye. How ironic, because he had just blinded Lane Morse. They spent $250,000 saving Omar Khadr's eye. Then they flew him to Bagram and flew him to Guantanamo Bay, fattened him up, give him 10 years of hospitality, and now he's going to be set free. I mean, an amazing testimony to the professionalism and generosity of
Right.
the U.S. forces that they didn't murder this little thug right there.
So what is the timeline on this? He's going to be set free.
Well, that's right. Under this deal that Obama asked Harper to agree to, he can leave Guantanamo Bay any day now because his one-year sentence is up. So, and now he can't fly commercial because he's a convicted terrorist. He's on the
Right.
no-fly list. So he will get on a private jet and fly, probably stop in Miami and then fly to Toronto.
The U.S. Air Force?
That or a Canadian plane, probably Canadian. We won't even know he's here till we see him because he's not passing through customs. He's not going through Pearson Airport. But there is one barrier. There's a law called the International Transfer of Offenders Act. And it's a checklist for taking basically Canadians in jail overseas, bringing them home. At any one time,
Right.
there's between 1,000 and 2,000 Canadians in jail overseas, usually for selling drugs or something. We can bring them home, but the checklist, Fanny, is very important. Is this person a public security danger in Canada? That's the test that our public safety minister named Vic Taves has to check. There is no box, did the President of the United States ask for a favor? Does the mainstream media want this to happen? That's not a box. The box in the checklist is he a safety threat? And Dr. Michael Wellner, who spent 2 days with Omar Khadr in Guantanamo, videotaped the whole thing, spent hours reviewing documents, said this is a highly dangerous man. But his testimony, Dr. Wellner's testimony, his interview with Omar Khadr was suppressed and was not shown to the Canadian government when the Obama administration
So
made the
suppressed
request.
by the American,
The
by
video,
the Pentagon.
Yeah, the Pentagon
I'm thinking.
the Pentagon is still
I sound
not,
like a conspiracy
well,
theorist,
but it's not
it's so shocking to
maybe
me.
suppressed is the wrong word. They just haven't disclosed it. I mean, they're not hiding the fact that it exists. To this day, here we are in 2012, that 8-hour videotaped interview with Omar Khadr has not yet been shared with our Canadian government.
Okay, but to this day, if you take a poll on the streets of Vancouver, anywhere in Canada, most Canadians believe Omar Khadr is an innocent, is a child, so I know you've disproved that
Right.
in this book, but a child soldier, just a Muslim,
Right. You know what?
not a terrorist.
You know what? The number one victims of terrorism are liberal Muslims. If you look at places like Bali, Indonesia, Turkey, and Muslims in Canada have come to this country to get away from the jihad, to live freely. So this isn't Muslim versus Jewish versus Christian. This is terrorists versus peace lovers. I don't care what race or religion you are. Omar Khadr is motivated by a desire to enslave others. He says so himself.
So Khadr returns, goes directly to jail, doesn't go to jail, is not de-radicalized. If he goes to jail, what jail do you know?
He would go to jail, and I don't know which prison he would go to because we don't have any terrorists in Canadian jails. We're not equipped for it.
We may.
Well, yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. There are some here under some security certificates, but we've never dealt with someone like this before. We don't have a de-radicalization program here, and if we did, Khadr would reject it as he has at Guantanamo Bay. He would probably serve a number of months while the parole board spins him out into the street. I mean, I've examined our laws. He would be out on the street in a matter of months, maybe even weeks. And then he would be free. He would be free to do this lecture circuit, to do the TV circuit, to do the mosque circuit like his daddy did.
So where is the stop? At the parole board level? At the prison level?
There's two levels. The first is the International Transfer of Offenders Act. Vic Taves can say no. Now, obviously, he's going to need the Prime Minister's backup on that because you don't say no to President Obama lightly. When the U.S. President asks you to do you a favor, you've got to have a reason and to break that favor. So that's the first line of defense. The second line of defense is...
Stop there because Taves says no. Khadr remains at Gitmo.
For another 7 years.
Stays there for another 7 years.
And then we got to take
And then
him.
what?
And then he's
So the deal's sweet, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
The plea bargain, the deal is we have to take him at some point.
That's right. Now, that point should have been 40 years into the future. Obama cut a deal making that down to 8. And then he cut a deal with Harper bringing that down to 1 year. We can't get away from the 8-year sweet deal that Obama gave him, but we can stop that crazy 1-year deal that would bring him back any day now. With Vic Taves saying no to the transfer, he needs Harper's backup on that. But God forbid if Harper and Taves sign the prison transfer, there is one more line of defense. That's the parole board. But how could we make a proper decision on parole or prison transfer if we don't see those 8 hours of videotape? The Pentagon has them. I spoke to Dr. Michael Wellner. I've spoken to the Canadian government. They have not been released. And I think our Canadian government should request those 8 hours. Wouldn't you like to see 8 hours of discussion with Omar Khadr before deciding whether or not he's safe on our streets? I think we know that information is there. We know it hasn't been shared. How could our government, in good faith, say, yeah, we'll take that prisoner back without knowing what they're getting in their hands?
Well, see, I thought he was whiling away in Gitmo and not being treated well. like probably being tortured. I mean, that's the perception,
Well,
isn't it?
of course it is.
And he was a peaceful man now.
You know what? And that's the thing. Even if you accept the argument that he was just a child 10 years ago, which he wasn't. He was on the verge of 16. A 16-year-old murders someone on the street here, they're going to jail.
Well, yes, but he also was raised in Canada. He knew Canada. He
knew right and wrong.
His grandparents loved him, and
But
he
how about
was
today?
like a
So
little
today,
happy kid.
he's 25 years old today. What's he like today? Is he reformed? Is he a liberal now? Is he grown up? Has he renounced it? No. He is more dangerous today than he was 10 years ago because he's more radicalized. He's more fundamentalist. He's had 10 years of thinking. He does not repent or regret. And he has been hanging out with fellow terrorists for 10 years. He is more dangerous today than he was 10 years ago in Afghanistan.
Okay, have you heard from any of the more liberal journalists in this country, the Judy Rebecks and some of them who
It's funny you mentioned
are
Judy.
on the other side?
Yeah.
I know you wrote about her in here, and she's feisty, so she may just call you.
Judy Rebeck compared Omar Khadr to Nelson Mandela. What an insult to Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela, a forgiver, a man of peace, a liberator, a Democrat. Omar Khadr is none of those things. And the irony is Judy Rebeck is a Jewish woman. That's basically first on the list of who
And a
Omar
smart woman.
Yeah, well, Omar Khadr doesn't like Jews much, doesn't like women much unless they're all covered up. He doesn't like liberals much. It's a strange thing going on with left-wing liberal women in particular who love this little fascist who would kill him in a second.
Well, we loved Ismail Bea because
but
he was a child
victim.
soldier.
He was truly a child, truly a victim, and he has turned into a liberal, remorseful healer. Omar Khadr was not really a child. He's never shown repentance, and he's not a healer now. He's a killer. He wants to kill. He says that murdering that American was the best day of his life.
Well,
Fanny.
I know his mother says he is something like, he is my little hero.
Yeah.
Arar, the man who was arrested at JFK and sent to Syria and came back to Canada. I think we paid him $10.2 million.
An enormous sum.
And you think he's innocent?
Well, you know what?
Or what do you think?
I think that we don't know the truth about Meher Arar. He has never testified under oath, even at the commission bearing his name. He has never submitted to an independent medical exam corroborating his claims of torture. I do not think that Meher Arar is a murderer, like I know Omar Khadr is, but I do know that he worked the system well. And you know what? Omar Khadr has a big lawsuit against the Canadian government. He may well be a millionaire soon if he comes back too.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Because, as you know, when you paint the brush, then everybody's suspect.
You know what? I don't know what Meher Arar did or didn't do. I'm not alleging that he's a murderer. I'm not an expert in Meher Arar. I think that we got hornswoggled on that. I think paying $10 million to a fella who had there were a lot of asterisks and a lot of question marks about what he was doing that haven't been answered. I mean, you would think that the Meher Arar inquiry would call Meher Arar to testify. They didn't.
So one of your big messages in here is ask the questions.
That's right. And unfortunately, the consensus media has decided that the war on terror is bad and they've turned terrorists into folk heroes. No. Putting aside Meher Arar.
Not all terrorists. We haven't.
Well, I think...
We have our bad terrorists.
Well, we have
all
a few of
terrorists
them.
are bad.
Well,
Let's start there.
I wish everyone in the media was as resolute as you. It pains me to say it, but the media, the left-wing media, the liberal media, loved America on 9/11 when it was bowed down and bleeding. But when America decided to fight back and defend itself, then the media said, well, we don't like you so much in America, a strong America defending itself. I think that too many journalists actually secretly sympathize with America's underminers, and some of them don't secretly sympathize, they're out and out. Michelle Shepard, the author who wrote another book about Omar Khadr called Guantanamo's Child, in her own book says she's a sympathizer. She doesn't even pretend to be a reporter. There are people trying to turn Omar Khadr into a hero.
Yes.
And I wrote this book as a rebuttal to that. And this book has one purpose, Fanny, to get Vic Taves to say no on the prison transfer. You know what, it made the Globe and Mail bestseller list for a few weeks, it's doing well in the stores, that's great, but the only test of this book's success is can Vic Taves be persuaded to say no, we will not take this terrorist back 1 minute before we have to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fanny.
Nice to see you once again.
You too.
Ezra Levant, The Enemy Within, Terror, Lies, and the Whitewashing of Omar Khadr. Now we'll lighten up whether it's a good thing or not.
Can't get any heavier.